WAN architecture. In this video, I'm going to talk about the different architectures that we have in the WAN and specifically on the Metro Ethernet. We have different type of WAN architecture. One of them is the Metro Ethernet and the others can be, for example, MPLS or Internet. I will talk about other type of WAN architecture in future videos, but in this video I am going to talk about specifically the Metro Ethernet. What is the Metro Ethernet? First, let me to review some of the topics that you have learned before in this class about the WAN connections. You know that when we want to connect two of our sites to each other, we need to say, for example, buy a service of connectivity from one service provider. For example, you know that we have R1 and R2 and we want to connect these two branches to each other. For example, here we have one LAN. Okay, this is the branch 2 and this is the branch 1. The branch 1 connected to the router 1, okay, and the branch 2 connected to the router 2. Router 1 is the edge router of the branch 1 and router 2 is the edge router for the for example, branch 2, and we want to connect these two branches to each other. You know that we cannot connect these two sites to each other ourselves. Why? Because you know that here we have many distance, and this means that, for example, between these two sites we have 100 kilometers of distance, or maybe more, or maybe a little less. But finally, we need to give the service or take the service from the service providers. How? In service providers, we can buy the connectivity service with some payment. For example, we are paying some amount of money in 1 month for a specific bandwidth and also a connectivity. Okay, and we have different technology that we can use them to connect our site to each other. For example, one of the technology is using the lease line. Okay, here we can buy a lease line, and after that, with this lease line we can connect our sites to each other. Actually, lease line is a point-to-point line, okay, and this is a generic term. This means that about the lease line we have different type of lease line. For example, one type of lease line that you have learned before is the serial lease line. You know that about the serial lease line, or the for example, such as the T1 link or T3 link. Okay, we are connecting the lease line to the serial interface of the routers. Here we are using the for example, data link protocol of the HDLC or PPP, and this is not Ethernet. Okay, you know that here we don't have the Ethernet communication between two sites. Actually, when the Ethernet frame is receiving on interface of router 1, you know that LAN is using Ethernet, and here we have the Ethernet frame. This Ethernet frame now is receiving by the router 1. The router 1 should convert this Ethernet frame to the HDLC or PPP frame. Okay, and after that it can send this frame to the router 2, and in router 2 again we should create a new Ethernet frame and sending to the LAN. Actually, here we don't have the between the two routers, router 1 and router 2, the Ethernet for example, frame and Ethernet data link. We are using another protocols. But in the previous videos in this course, you have learned that another type of the lease line is using the Ethernet WAN. Let me to show you. Here we can use the Ethernet interface. For example, between the router 1 and router 2, we can use 1 gigabit interface. This is gigabit interface in the router 1 side, and also this is gigabit interface, gigabit Ethernet interface in the router 2 side. And after that, now here between two router or two site, we have the Ethernet as the data link layer protocol. Okay, actually this means that we are sending the Ethernet frame between the router 1 and router 2. Because of that, again here the router 1 is receiving the Ethernet frame. The router 1 should create a new Ethernet frame now, and after that in router 2, the router 2 receiving this Ethernet frame, the encapsulating the frame to the packet, and after after that it should create another Ethernet frame and send to the network. Actually, here we are using the Ethernet WAN service. Okay, you know that in the traditionally Ethernet was used only in LAN, but now we have two type of Ethernet. You have learned about this Ethernet LAN and also Ethernet WAN. This means that in the WAN today's we can have Ethernet, and this is so interesting and also so useful. Okay, and because of that, now I'm going to talk about the Ethernet WAN. Let me to write here about the Ethernet. We have two type of Ethernet: traditional Ethernet, Ethernet LAN. Okay, and for example, new implementation of the Ethernet WAN. You know that about these two type of Ethernet, we don't have any difference about the framing. For example, in both Ethernet LAN and Ethernet WAN, we have this, for example, parts. First, the FCS as the Ethernet trailer, and after that we have the packet, and then we have the type, and then source address or source MAC. After that, destination address or destination MAC, and then SFD, and then preamble. This means that about the frame, we know that we don't have any difference between the Ethernet LAN and also Ethernet WAN. But the question is that how we can implement the Ethernet between router 1 and router 2. You know that Ethernet has one important limitation. For example, in the Ethernet LAN, we are using the traditionally we have used the twisted pair cables. Twisted pair cable has limitation about the distance, only 100 meters. Okay, but you know that also we have some fiber link. Okay, with fiber link we can reach to more distance. For example, with fiber link we can reach maybe 200 kilometers or maybe a little more. Okay, because of that, we can say today's we are using the fiber links between the different site of our one company. But you know that about the Ethernet WAN, okay, we cannot establish the fiber link between the two sites ourselves, because this is not possible that, for example, we are creating one fiber link between the city 1 and city 2. This should be maintained, this should be created with the service providers, and after that we can rent some part of the bandwidth of the fiber from the service provider. Okay, because of that, actually the difference between the Ethernet LAN and Ethernet WAN is that the service provider should for example, create the service, and after that we can buy this Ethernet WAN from the service provider. Actually, in this video we are talking about the Ethernet WAN, but with more detail. We call this type of Ethernet WAN as the Metro Ethernet. Metro Ethernet means Ethernet WAN, means the type of for example, Ethernet connectivity that we can use it in the WAN. But don't forget, in previous videos we have only learned about the one type of Ethernet WAN. This is the E-LAN. You will learn about this type of Ethernet LAN. This is the E-LAN. In E-LAN we have a direct, or we have a point-to-point Ethernet WAN. Okay, only between router 1 and router 2. Maybe we have more than for example 2 sites, we have 4 sites, we have 6 sites, we have 10 sites, or maybe more. And we need to connect these sites, for example, multiple sites together, such with a, for example, a multi-point connection or point-to-multi-point connection. I will talk about them. Because of that, actually, in this video, we will talk about the Ethernet WAN, okay? But this is not limited to the Ethernet WAN or point-to-point Ethernet WAN that you have learned to the previous videos. We are talking with more detail about the Ethernet WAN. Okay, until now we have learned that the Metro Ethernet means the Ethernet WAN, but not only point-to-point Ethernet WAN. Okay, Metro Ethernet means how we can connect the different site of a customer with the Ethernet data link layer protocol, and also, for example, with fibers. Okay, you know that the other name of the Metro Ethernet is Metro uppercase E. If you see this Metro E, this means that we are talking about the Metro Ethernet and also Ethernet WAN. Let me to explain a little more about the Ethernet WAN. We have 3 types of Ethernet WAN. The first type is the E-LAN. Okay, you will learn about them, don't worry. And after that, the second type is the E-LAN. Okay, and the third type